In the vast expanse of space, a quiet yet increasingly intense battle is unfolding, a modern form of aerial dogfighting, but among satellites orbiting hundreds of miles above Earth. This covert activity, driven by geopolitical tensions, is reshaping how nations view their presence and power in orbit. Imagine a scenario where an American surveillance satellite, designated USA-270, spots two Chinese spacecraft maneuvering through a particularly sensitive orbital region. In typical military fashion, USA-270 approaches from behind with the sun positioned behind it, illuminating the targets and giving it an advantage. However, in a surprising turn, one of the Chinese satellites decelerates deliberately, changing the dynamic of the pursuit. As USA-270 speeds past, the Chinese craft repositions itself behind the American satellite, performing a maneuver reminiscent of Maverick's iconic hit-the-brakes move from Top Gun. The roles then reverse, compelling U.S. operators on the ground to reassess their next strategic move. This high-stakes orbital interaction, which occurred approximately 22,000 miles above Earth in 2022, was never officially disclosed by either the Pentagon or Beijing. Such encounters happen out of public view, mostly unnoticed by the general public, but they do not escape the notice of space and defense specialists. Over time, these encounters have become so frequent that experts now refer to them as space dogfights, a term borrowed from the aerial combat of fighter jets but applied here to the increasingly competitive and aggressive maneuvers of satellites. The practice of satellites zooming past each other at close distances, often to gain strategic advantage, is a relatively recent phenomenon that marks a significant shift in the militarization of space. Today, satellites are mission-critical tools for maintaining military dominance, supporting everything from missile warnings to reconnaissance, communications, and intelligence gathering. As the technological competition among global superpowers intensifies, so does the importance of controlling this high-stakes orbital arena. Understanding space surveillance and its importance. Most of this dogfighting activity is believed to be for intelligence and espionage purposes. Defense analysts suggest that many of these maneuvers involve intercepting or observing each other's satellites, taking detailed photographs to analyze systems and capabilities. They also monitor signals, listening to communications transmitted between satellites and ground stations, and may interfere with these signals through jamming techniques or direct interference, especially targeting assets vital for missile detection, spying, or military communication. Among the notable incidents was a close approach between U.S. and Chinese satellites in February 2022. Two Chinese experimental satellites, Shenzhen 12-01 and Shenzhen 12-02, were observed moving westward near a highly sensitive zone called geostationary orbit, which lies about 22,000 miles above Earth's equator. USA-270 approached these satellites from behind, and over subsequent days, the Chinese units executed deliberate maneuvers, splitting apart and positioning themselves to face the sun directly, shifting their relative positions over hours and even days. In space, proximity is taken very seriously. Satellites can reach speeds of approximately 17,500 miles per hour, about 5 miles per second. Even an approach as close as 10 miles can be considered risky. Unlike jet dogfights, these orbital dealings stretch over hours or days, with satellite operators carefully calculating their maneuvers to avoid collisions while trying to position themselves advantageously. Historically, satellites were designed to follow fixed paths, conserving fuel and energy, and avoiding complex maneuvers. But with new technological innovations, both the US and adversaries like China and Russia are developing satellites capable of dynamic, aircraft-like movements, banking, slowing down, speeding up, and flying in formations, expanding the scope of space military operations. Military strategies and the shifting rules of engagement in space. Satellites weren't originally built for combat or self-defense, explains Clinton Clark, Chief Growth Officer at Exoanalytic Solutions, a private company that monitors orbital activity. But that's changing now. We're witnessing a shift towards more aggressive and tactical capabilities. Chinese space programs are actively maneuvering their spacecraft to gain positional advantages over U.S. satellites, as noted by General Stephen Whiting of the U.S. Space Command. These movements might be intended to establish dominance or prepare for potential conflict scenarios. Whiting emphasized that, to maintain their strategic edge, the U.S. must develop comparable maneuvering capabilities. In response, China claims to pursue peaceful uses of space, condemning the arms race and weaponization of orbit, asserting that it has no intention of seeking military dominance intentionally. Nonetheless, its activities suggest a clear intent to develop advanced maneuvering satellites that could be used in conflicts. China's rapid expansion in space. China's space ambitions are formidable. It operates 6 spaceports domestically to launch satellites, an impressive network that saw a record number of over 80 launches in recent months, including rapid-fire launches within a short span. Their plans include lunar missions, with a goal to land astronauts on the Moon by 2030, potentially surpassing U.S. efforts. The focus isn't limited to the Moon, significant attention is directed toward the geostationary orbit. This region is critical because it hosts some of the most sensitive military satellites, responsible for missile warning, reconnaissance, and global communications. To safeguard this orbital neighborhood, the Pentagon initiated a surveillance program in 2014, deploying dedicated satellites to monitor activity and, when necessary, approach or intercept adversary spacecraft. As space becomes crowded, the enhancement of space situational awareness is vital. Companies like ComSpot and Exoanalytic use flight data to recreate satellite movements, providing real-time insights to military agencies. The growing activity raises concerns about potential hostilities, as exemplified by recent incidents involving Russian satellites maneuvering dangerously close to U.S. and Allied assets. The art and science of satellite maneuvering. Satellites in geostationary orbit follow a precise altitude that allows them to hover above the same Earth point, about 22,236 miles high. Slight deviations in altitude drift the spacecraft east or west, which operationally allows for strategic repositioning. Maneuvering tactics involve adjusting altitude or orientation, drawing parallels with aerial combat. For example, satellites often take measures to keep the sun behind them to avoid blinding reflections or to better observe targets. Just like in Top Gun, positioning for the perfect shot or observation is critical. Towards space control and superiority. The ultimate goal for the Pentagon is establishing space superiority, ensuring U.S. satellites can operate freely and confidently, akin to naval or air dominance. Under ambitious initiatives like President Trump's proposed Golden Dome missile shield, efforts are underway to deploy autonomous satellites in low Earth orbit that could intercept incoming missiles, a new era of space-based missile defense. While destruction of satellites from the ground has historically been a form of anti-satellite warfare, China's 2007 destruction of a satellite being a notable example, now, direct satellite-to-satellite interactions are emerging. Countries like China, Russia, and India have tested anti-satellite missiles, with some destroying targets in orbit or attempting to shoot down satellites. The U.S. has also performed similar tests but emphasizes plans to minimize orbital debris. Pentagon officials acknowledge that the current state of space warfare remains in development. Tactics such as jamming, laser disruption, or kinetic strikes are being researched and refined. Future conflicts could see swarms of robotic spacecraft executing coordinated attacks, an evolution that might resemble aerial dogfights on a new level. In fact, in recent years, Chinese satellites have demonstrated swarming behavior, coming astonishingly close, within half a mile, to each other, an exercise described as face-to-face contact in space, and likened to dogfighting by senior military officials. These operations suggest an escalation towards complex, coordinated, multi-satellite engagements. The rapid growth of Chinese satellite fleets, exceeding 1,000 units, has provided many more targets and opportunities for militarized maneuvers. The recent interception of Chinese satellites Shenzhen 12-01 and 12-02 by U.S. satellites exemplifies this new phase of space activity, involving close approaches and complex interactions. In these encounters, U.S. satellites have pursued Chinese satellites, sometimes within 25 miles, adjusting positions relative to the Sun to maintain observational advantages. Chinese satellites have also demonstrated the ability to reverse course or split apart, signaling advanced maneuvering capabilities. Further dramatic developments include China's Shijian 21 Grab